If you click this video, you are probably struggling to get Temporal Sanctum keys, which grant you access to the new endgame dungeon in last Epoch. I have farmed 35 keys yesterday in around 9 hours, averaging almost 4 keys per hour. Let me share with you how I did that. If you found this guide helpful, consider subscribing. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. Okay, let's start with answering the question where these keys are coming from in the first place. The Temporal Sanctum keys can only be dropped from rare enemies that are level 54 or higher. The only other place to get these keys are bosses in the monolith. This is very important to realize. The enemies have to be rare. Our strategy mainly revolves around this. We're going to be aiming to get as many rares into an echo as possible to increase our chances of success. Please keep in mind that at the end of the day it is RNG, but this guide aims to increase your RNG significantly. First, how to identify rare enemies. If you're unaware, you can figure out if an enemy is a rare enemy by hovering over them. Rare enemies have yellow nameplates at the top of the screen. Other decent indicators are auras around them or other fancy visual stuff going on. Usually only rares have that. Some enemies count as rare despite not showing as rare. I found, for example, that void centipedes dropped me many keys, 3 in a single echo, all from void centipedes. But technically these aren't rare enemies, they're just big. You may find similar results for other larger creatures, such as the profane flesh. I haven't tested that myself. On the other hand, some enemies are always rare. Think of the big burrowing beetles or the queen beetles, the massive crabs, the big snake ladies, the siege golems and the Maruna ogres. These are 100% of the time rare enemies. When you go into an echo, the first thing you should do is identify what I call the rare density. You might assume that the percentage of rare enemies is the same in each echo, but this is definitely not true. It was confirmed in a DM by Mox as well. Your first order of business, therefore, is trying to assess how many rares you see in a certain time window, let's say the first 30 seconds of an echo. I am making a distinction for myself while doing that assessment, and I created 3 categories of rare density. 1. There are virtually no rares available at all. 2. There are a few rares available, and 3. The echo is littered with rares. They are all over the place. There are echoes in category 1, especially if they're inhabited by necrotic enemies that have basically 0 rare monsters in them. You want to get these echoes over with ASAP, so just rush the objective like we used to do and then exit the echo. The second category has some rares, they occasionally pop up, and you can choose for yourself if you want to clear more than is required. I typically hang out for a bit longer if the enemies aren't that tough, but I avoid backtracking in my echo, for example. The third category, where the echo is completely filled with rares, which happens a lot with beasts, for example, so big raptors or the burrowing beetles, those are the echoes I completely clear. After the echo objective, I full clear the map because there are so many rares, and all of them have a chance to drop me a key. This is very important. You need to full clear these echoes because they are by far your best way to get a key, and you could drop a significant number of keys in there. Now, how do you decide which echoes to run? It's hard to tell up front which rare density you will encounter, but there are certainly a few factors to take into account. For example, it matters which timeline you are doing. Your timeline determines the echoes you can roll, and that in turn determines which enemy types you encounter. I farmed the Admiral Harten timeline the entire morning for 4 hours, and I was mainly fighting void and necrotic enemies. These are okay in terms of rares, but definitely not amazing, especially the necrotic enemy type just doesn't have a lot of rares in them. I then started farming the Lagon timeline, and that seems to be much better because you get a lot of opportunities to spawn rares with beetles, Maruna ogres, siege golems and those massive crabs. This is anecdotal, but I think I encountered way more rares in that timeline. Next to rares, bosses drop keys too. I found 2 keys from a single Orbis fight and I found 2 keys from a single Harten fight. But I also completed an entire quest timeline including Harten with the fight without a single key dropping. It's definitely not consistent. However, as you are farming the monolith for rare density, you are gaining timeline stability by completing echoes, and I would recommend running the quest timeline. Not only are you getting unique loot from the bosses and a chance to get a better blessing, the quest echoes typically contain a lot of rares as well, and they do drop keys. The bosses themselves have a high chance of dropping a key, but it's not guaranteed. I would also advise to kill Orbis when you can, because he can drop keys as well. and because you can increase corruption, which brings me to the final thing you can do to influence your drop chances. For example, I farmed the Abomination timeline and I did that at 100 corruption for 2 hours. I didn't kill the boss, I just farmed the monolith using my strategy with rare density. In 2 hours I found around 5 keys. Then I increased the corruption to 200, farmed the Hearten timeline and started weaving in Orbis kills and Hearten kills, and I almost tripled that number. Corruption makes the echoes a lot harder, but it increases the drop rates significantly. In some echoes I dropped up to 3 keys even in a single echo. And of course there are the echo modifiers as well from running the echoes, and they're added on top of this. In short, the advice is to run the highest corruption you can comfortably handle without dying all the time. Dying is a massive waste of time and loot, so it's bad. I'm fine running 200 corruption with my slow but steady build here, for example. Speaking of builds, your build matters a lot, of course. If you are a fast rogue, you clear twice as fast as me at least, so clearly you would get more keys. But using my own strategy, even with a slow build, I now have more keys than suitable uniques I want to craft. I have more keys than I need. Something that doesn't seem to drop keys at all are the arena nodes, so I recommend not running them if you can help it. You hardly get any loot and I haven't found a single key in there. Also beacon and chaos echoes, and then I mean the beacon event, the one burning out your eyes, that doesn't drop keys either. It spawns a ton of rares, so you'd think it's good, but those rares don't drop loot. I fully cleared the Temporal Sanctum itself 2 times, which has a lot of high level rares in it, but I didn't get a key either, so I think that region doesn't drop keys. To summarize, Step 1. Identify the rare density of an echo and act accordingly. Step 2. Run the highest corruption and echo modifiers you can comfortably handle with your build, but don't push it. And Step 3. Don't run arena nodes. Do this and your shortage of keys should disappear. If you have any more tips, please share them in the comments and let me know if this strategy worked as well for you as it did for me. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.